Tell me your full name, please.
Ricardo Alberto Quincero.
My name is Joshua Caparoso Dava.
My name is Joseph Reyes Dodike.
My name is Brian Davis.
My name is Eduardo Rivas.
Long Beach, California.
I was born in Torrance, California.
So I was born in the West Side, specifically St. Mary's Hospital. And I've just been in the West Side most of my life.
Born in Torrance Memorial, so yeah, I've always grown up in that part of LA.
Yeah.
I'm from Santa Ana, California.
Where they're from, my mom lived on a ranch, so they lived very poorly. They basically had to eat dirt because they were so, they weren't, wealthy or anything. In regards to my dad grew up in the city, so my mom was, worse off than my dad, I guess, as a child. My dad's from Guadalajara, Jalisco, from a little town named Zapopan. And I think that was, a middle-class lifestyle for my dad. Or a lower middle class lifestyle. I think so. He didn't suffer as much as my mom did because they grew up really poor living conditions and everything.
My parents were both born in the Philippines.
My parents immigrated from San Carlos City, Pangasinan, Philippines. First it was my mom that immigrated here along with her sister. Then eventually more of her family came to Long Beach. And then finally a couple years, I want to say at least a decade after my mom came to America, my dad followed suit.
I come from a family of Peruvian immigrants. They moved here around 1997, I believe.
My dad is from Mexico City. My mom is from Guerrero. They met. My mom's mom, she sent my mom away to get a better education because I guess in Guerrero there wasn't really schooling, so they sent her out to Mexico City to live with my grandma's brother, which was my mom's uncle, and she lived there with her cousins and her uncle and aunt, and she met my dad there through school pretty much, and yeah, that's how they met.
I think my mom moved here. Well, from what I've asked my grandparents, they moved here just for a better life for their kids.
My mom came around the age of 19, so she was still in college, so she had to drop out. And she came because the rest of her family was moving here. And my dad came, I think 2 years later, so that he could be with my mom. I think my mom was training to be a doctor, and my dad was studying to be a pilot, and they both had to give that up because things look better over here in America. That was the what's the word? Whatever, I forgot.
The American dream?
Yeah, you know what I mean? The American dream, yeah, basically. It was that. Everyone wanted to come to America, or just somewhere else. The Philippines. The Philippines wasn't some place to be at. It was very dangerous.
Yeah, how?
And everyone was in poverty.
Oh.
My parents, my mom is 4 years younger than my dad. And my parents met when my mom was 16. And I believe the story went is that every day my dad would court my mom, and eventually they waited at least 18 to 20 years before they actually got married and decided to move to America. I believe they moved for that financial opportunity here in America, and also because of family, because my mom's brother came before she did.
Yeah, the American dream.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so my parents, they are both from Peru. They both lived in the capital, Lima, Peru. The reason they moved here was before it was all fine.
all their family was there and they were financially stable until around 1994 probably, is my guess, is where they started to have a very corrupt government. So the government was starting to affect the whole social and I guess financial aspects of Peru. And on top of that, there was a terrorist group called the Shining Path, I believe it's called. So the terrorist group, the Shining Path, came over and they were an extreme group in South America where they wanted to overtake the government. So there was a huge, I guess, boost in violence and bombings and just terrorist acts in Peru, especially around the capital. And my parents, they experienced a lot of, I guess, the situations that would come across. So, I mean, there's one time where the building right next door just exploded during the middle of the day. And my sister, she was a baby at the time. So I think that was a reality check for my parents, that they needed to find somewhere else to live. Especially my dad, who was studying to be an accountant. He thought it'd be a good idea to move over to LA, especially, or the United States in LA, especially since we had, one of my uncles was here, and then his little brother, of course, came over a bit later.
If I remember correctly, it was some of my mom's like siblings, like her sister and her brother were already there, I think. And I don't know why they chose Santa Ana. I guess because it was just like close to, you know, the border, or like, you know, just like a little more in but not too far in either. So yeah, I don't know. They just ended up being there because like some other family was already there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the older child.
Okay. And how many siblings do you have?
One sister and one half brother.
I have 3 siblings. They're all girls. Janice is the oldest. She is 1 year younger than I am. And then Julia, who is 3 years younger than me. And Jenna, who is 7 years younger than me.
I'm the youngest of 3 brothers.
My sister is 7 years older than me?
Yeah.
7 to 8-ish.
My oldest sister is like 30 something. Her name is Laura. My middle sister is Sonia. She's 30 something. No, she's like 29. And I'm the youngest at 25.
Okay.
Growing up in a Latino household for me, I'd say it's definitely interesting. Just kind of when you compare it to like, I don't know, the typical, I guess, like American family sort of. I feel like we have a lot more community, like a lot more, there's a stronger like presence of family sort of, like a stronger family ties. And I don't know, like growing up Latino for me, it's been a lot of fun.
Growing up with sisters, it was kind of cool because, like, you know, all my things were mine. I didn't have to share it, first of all. And but that did mean that I was their older brother, so that I felt like I always had more pressure to be like the best sibling I can be, and to be like responsible of them and to mind them a lot. But I've always found that they advanced like a lot more than me.
Yeah.
So it was always more of them taking care of me. My mom worked the night shift, but was pretty much a housewife throughout the day, whereas my dad was always finding new jobs, whether it be from being a mechanic to working in air conditioning to working at Walmart. He just always had trouble like securing a single job. And so yeah, like they had, you know, different schedules, so they didn't see each other that often. The only time they ever did would be at like the middle of the night. You know, other than that, We pretty much raised ourselves, I'd say. So in Filipino families, the men pretty much provide for the family. Like that's literally what they call the men, the providers. And there was always that pressure for me to be more successful so that I can be the next provider for when my dad dies. And I don't know, I just always thought that was scary. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I could barely take care of myself, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely.
I got away with certain things that my brothers didn't really get away with, you know. Like I feel like even though, like, my parents treated me like a model, even though I wasn't really, and that like made me get away with certain things more than my brothers.
Was that a lot of pressure, like, being compared to your brothers?
I want to say yeah, especially now, because both of my brothers are very successful. I feel like they were molded to become what my parents wanted to have as children, you know. Like, compared to my brothers, I feel like I'm not really fitting the type of mold that my parents want me to be, but I'm still doing the best I can, and yeah.
Growing up with my parents, we were always safe. I mean, there's nothing. Honestly, I'm lucky to say there's nothing, I guess, negative that other families would experience. Both of my parents loved each other. So we were stable. There's just always a few times where we, I guess, come across dilemmas or problems within each other, especially me and my sister. Me and her don't really get along, probably because it's the age gap or maybe just how different our personalities are. She's a little bit more, I guess, how would you say? She's just more, I guess, passionate, and I'm more laid back and relaxed. So I guess she would always, whenever she had a bad day, I guess everyone else had a bad day with her. So there was always a conflict with her and my parents. As a kid, I was kind of not really paying attention to all of that until later when I grew up. There was like huge problems between in the relationship with my sister and my parents. And then, but going back to my relationship with my parents, me and my mom were really close. I could easily say I'm a mama's boy. That's for sure. She's like my best friend. I could talk to her about anything, whether it comes to school, relationships, with my friends, or with my girlfriend, or school. I've never really, I guess, had that much of a relationship as I wanted to with him. He was always working or studying in order to get his CPA. And looking back, I mean, I understood, but I felt like, as I reflect now, I kind of see how, due to him, I guess, prioritizing his work and studies for us also had a negative effect in terms of personal relationship with me. Me and him don't really have anything to talk about other than sports or school or work. I can't really, I guess, trust him on a personal level where like it was really difficult just for me to tell him that I had a girlfriend for some reason. I'm not sure as to why, but yeah, the Latinx culture is very, I guess, I feel like there are gender roles that go into play in the Latinx culture where the guy is seen as, or the man is seen as, machismo, the protector, the breadwinner, needs to provide for his family, and the mom is more like, I guess, taking care of the kids, taking care of the husband, making the food. And But another important thing was my dad. He didn't really have his parents growing up because they passed away when he was just 2, or I think 3, and his older brother or his younger brother was 1. So they were just little kids that weren't really raised by their own parents. They were rather raised from their grandmother. So that's just an older generation raising them, and they're also raised by my uncle, who is I guess he's 20 years older than them. So I guess how they were raised is the machismo. That's exactly how they kind of act.
Just growing up, how was it with your parents and your siblings? Like in terms of like were you paid more attention to because you were younger, or were you like paid more attention to because you were the only son?
Both. If I'm being honest, yeah, I got the special treatment because 1, I was the youngest, and 2, I was the only boy. And yeah, if like bonding, I would say more with my sisters, just because we were like closer to age, obviously, and like we had a lot more things in common. Like they showed me a lot of the music I'm like into and shows I watch, and my dad, like he's the one that got me into like video games because he played video games, and we bonded over that mainly. Like we would play a lot of PlayStation together. Like we would just watch. Like I remember we would watch this TV show where it was just like it was on Sky, which is like a Mexican like Spanish satellite. And there was like a channel or like a show where like some lady would be reviewing video games, and I remember I would just be like in his bed. We'd just be like laying together, just watching that, like, and I would always ask him like, "Oh, can we get that game next? Can we get that game next?" And yeah, that's how me and my dad mainly bonded. I think with video games. Like he would take me every week to like rent a game, and I loved it.
I always knew that I was like a smart kid or whatever because of what like the educational institution told us, but I always knew that I had like I had potential to do like good things in school in like my education. So right now I'm a marketing major.
Is that something you've always wanted to do or always thought about?
I wanted to do theater in high school, but I guess it kind of got a little more practical. Like I wanted something that was more sort of achievable in a way, so I went into business honestly not knowing what the hell marketing was. So I jumped into that, and at first I didn't like it, but I'm starting to get into it much more now.
And you said theater isn't practical. What do you mean by that?
By that, I just meant sort of, it's a little more difficult to go into theater and make money. That's the typical assumption, that there's no money going into those types of professions. And it's very competitive too. For me, I wouldn't say it's like a stressful pressure. There's definitely like pressure, but it's more like, I gotta get this done, I wouldn't say it's bad. I'd just say it's something that I have to do in a way in order to, once again, like make my parents and family proud. So I just feel like I have to do it. I have to get that done before I die. So yeah.
I remember I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to college. In my mind, I wanted to take a break senior year. I wanted to take a break from school when I was done and focus on my mental health because that year I had just gotten out of the mental institution for trying to kill myself. Yeah, I wanted to focus on that, but there was like a lot of pressure about having to go to school. So when that time came around, and I did get accepted into Cal State Long Beach, I just took it, because I knew it would make my parents happy.
Did you choose like as your major?
Graphic design, because it sounded smart for them, and it was in the same field of what I wanted to do. But eventually that wasn't enough either, and I switched to computer science.
Why did you switch your major?
Because I found out that they were like in high demand. My mom told me that computer technicians are in even more high demand than graphic designers. And they made like a good amount of money where it was like stable enough. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. Because, you know, it did sound smarter to be stable. Which, I mean, I want to be an animator, which is very hard to do, especially with like all the other creatives out there, and like not having any, you know, just having creative blocks all the time. It's scary.
Did your parents like recognize that you were like doing well in school and like support you with that?
Yeah, definitely. So with the advanced classes, I was put in there because I was, like I said, I was more advanced than everyone else. But I feel like they were especially happy because it fit this idea of success to them. You know, a smarter kid will equal bigger success later on in life. At least that's what I believe what my parents believed in.
And their idea of success means like getting a good paying job, being, you know, able to support them in a way. So
I want to say their ideal success is more of a better paying job later in life and just living in like a cushy house, just being able to support everyone that's within the family, especially coming from a very collectivistic culture like the Philippines. Like there's this big emphasis on being able to support your family later on in life after you get a good paying job. I feel like that's like one of the pressures my parents keep telling me and my brothers: get a good job so you can help support us later in life. And going into college, I'd say it's very successful, especially with the major I picked, which is psychology. I feel like I'm knowing more about myself going through psychology and just learning what psychology can do for like everyone. So the reason I chose psychology specifically is to get an understanding of my personal disorders, because I used to suffer from generalized anxiety disorder, and I'm also suffering through depression. And going through psychology, like, I chose it so I can get an understanding of these disorders and see what I can do to help better myself and then better other people. Like it gives me a way to understand why certain people like might get to these positions and what I can do to either prevent that or to help them like feel better about themselves and just try and support them through like these disorders.
Yeah, my parents always said, I mean, they weren't always pushing education on me. They always wanted me to focus on it, or not, I guess just take it serious in a way. Probably especially during high school. But growing up, I was always interested in studying, but I felt like there's something in the back of my head saying, I need to do this for my family. Just something there, just seeing how my parents, they came from nothing, basically. And now that we are in a good place, I feel as though I need to do better for the good of my family. So yeah, growing up, I was always into school, just wanting to do good for my family, getting good grades, and always telling my parents coming home, I got an A, and then my dad would always call me his A+ child. So I felt like him putting that title on me kind of did put the pressure now. So I guess now that they saw me, I guess taking it serious, they're like, oh, like, this could be something special, so we should probably like try to influence more and probably push him for higher education. They'd always compared me to my sister. She wasn't always into school, and I felt like that really also, I guess, tarnished our relationship. She'd always, I guess, try to find a way to one-up me or whatever, and I would do the same, so that competitiveness would come. And then if I did get a bad grade, I'd feel like ashamed Like, I didn't want to tell my parents. I didn't even want to talk to them. I remember one time I cried because I got, this was before middle school, so 4th grade. I cried because I got a 3.5 GPA, and that was like second's principals list or whatever. And I started crying, and then my mom told me, she was like, "What are you crying for? There's kids who don't even get it." But I felt like there's the pressure that if I don't succeed, then I'll be a burden, that whatever they gave me is, I'm just throwing it away because I'm just wasting all the sacrifice they put.
Yeah.
College and stuff. Now it's just even more pressure because college is a different kind of thing. Sure, high school I was doing fine, and then throughout the application process, my parents had no idea what to do. They're just hoping I could ask the counselor to help out or everything like that. So they're kind of, since my sister hasn't gone to a university, she went to community college, they're kind of in the blue about how it works. And then when I'd applied, so I guess I applied to UCLA and USC, my mom would say, "Oh, but you didn't do like any like extracurriculars to get in, so why are you even trying?" And then when I got into Cal State Long Beach, that's when, like, I've never felt my parents be any prouder. Like, and it did feel good, but also, like, what if I did just go to community college and I didn't, you know, just that pressure. So I feel like comparing me with my sister, especially since I'm the only boy in the family, maybe that's the added pressure, because of the culture that the man always has to be the breadwinner, always has to provide.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a professional basketball player, but that wasn't gonna work. And then I don't know, just seeing my dad, I guess, as a businessman himself. He's like working for a firm, so I always see him in his suit. So I guess I was influenced in, I guess, being a businessman, but I'm not sure what. And then I started wanting to be, I guess, in management, which is why I chose my major. I just always had an interest in the business side of things, like the finances, you know, money. That's another main reason to provide for my family.
My parents obviously like wanted us to do well, but they were never really like super strict on like you know, you have to get the best or tests, you know, grades or anything. They were just wanted us to be comfortable, or at least that's how I saw it growing up. Like, for example, I got accepted into the GATE program like in 3rd grade, I believe. And GATE is like some advanced program, but they send you to like another school. And I told my parents I didn't want to go because I didn't want to leave my friends. And surprisingly, they, you know, let me decide and let me stay where I wanted to, like my regular elementary. Yeah, they had always had plans for us to like go to college though. Yeah, my sisters, you know, they did well in school and they went to college. Well, actually, Laura only went to community college. Sonia is the only like, college graduate like from Cal State Long Beach, and I did community college for a little bit too, but I didn't pursue it. But yeah, they were accepting of that. My parents, they always said like if we want to go to school, they would support us financially. If we don't want to like do school and work, or like if we're not gonna go to school, then you know at least get like a good paying job. You know, so they're pretty like lenient on things like that. Yeah, pretty much out of high school, I was like doing part-time work and like part school. Ended up just going like to full-time. I've been working mainly like in warehouses. That's where I'm at right now. I'm at an automation warehouse, which is just like a bunch of electrical panels and like motors. Like we get like contracts or other businesses that want us to build it for them, so they could just install it and you know go. But I'm mainly like in just the warehouse. Like I just do the inventory side. Like I make sure all the projects and everything get like the right equipment they need for the job. And yeah, I've just been mainly working warehouses since high school.
Okay. Do you like provide for your family, or do you like do like stuff on your own? Like, what is there any like situation?
Yeah, I provide, like I give pretty much like half my check every week to my mom and my dad, whatever, both of them. And I don't know. I don't even really know what to do with the money. I'm sure they use it to like either buy groceries or pay their bills or whatever. But yeah, like I'm not just like keeping all that money for myself and just working there, living for free. Like I'm that's like what I was saying earlier. Like they expect everyone to provide. Not just like me and my sisters are not. Like not just at home cleaning all day. Like they're out doing work too. And
Yeah.
and yeah.
To release that stress, I'd say definitely go out. I feel like if I'm trapped inside, like I feel kind of like outcasted from society in a way, and I just need to go out to like get my mind off of things and everything.
I used to have a therapist that I would go to that I got from high school, and it got to a point where we needed to have family therapy, and my parents didn't want to come in. My mom didn't like the idea of it because every time she did come in, she would just cry, and she would beg me. She would say, I don't want to feel that way anymore. I don't want to hurt. And I said, okay, I won't force you. Whereas my dad just isn't open to the idea of talking about it at all, so he just never came in for it.
Do you think that has something to do with your culture? Like, is mental health talked about in your parents' culture?
No, it's not. Mental health is, they call it, they sweep it under the rug. That's what they say. They don't ask, don't tell. They pretty much just move on. It's not a serious thing to them because they're always in survival mode, basically. They don't have time. That's the way they see it. Because whenever I felt a certain way, like in some instances where I thought I was right, and I felt like I had to, defend myself to my parents, like my dad would discipline me, like physically, right? And when I would tell my mom that like I didn't think that was right, she would tell me that like, that's what we all had to do. My dad had it worse, all that. And I'll be like, I don't understand like why it has to continue. And she would say something like, that's just the American in you or something, And it was like, I feel like my mental health, right? If sometimes I wonder if my parents, if they just talked to me, if my dad talked to me without, because he has like there's a way around him that I always have to learn, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating that he has to be like a man about it. He can't just tell me when he's sorry, right? He has to like do something, and then my mom has to go, did you notice that he did that for you? It's like, okay. You could have just told me that you felt bad. Right? Like little things like that I feel like could have helped me growing up. I feel like I could be a lot less sensitive, a lot less sad, maybe.
I believe, at least going through psychology, it's easier to talk about like my problems with my friends and try to like figure them out through like what I've learned through psychology rather than talking to my family. Because I don't know, especially with my brothers. I can talk to my oldest brother easily about some of my emotions, but due to how they kind of like form their personalities and stuff, it's kind of very aggressive and more, I guess you can say more about that machismo thing. And it's kind of off-putting talking to them about my emotions and what I'm feeling, because I feel like it's a little bit harder to talk to them about these things because they have this certain personality. And especially with my parents too, because for, I don't know, something about Asian parents, they don't really want to hear about your emotions. Like, they still care about you, but they don't want to, like, really take the time to figure out what's going wrong, you know? Like, they believe in more of those physical pains more than, like, the psychological pains. I know, like, especially when I was younger, I felt like I had to fit into, like, this masculine gender role, and that, like, also further prevented me from speaking what I want to say, my emotions and stuff. But as I grew up, that slowly shifted to me, like, disregarding gender roles to be able to speak what I want to say and to just do whatever I want. It's just that they never really addressed why we were sad. They just wanted to try and get us away from being sad to being happy, you know. They weren't comfortable with talking the reasons why. They just wanted, like, a solution to stop it.
Yeah, definitely. My parents are not a go-to for me. If I'm struggling in anything, probably my mom if it's like personal stuff. But other than that, no, I can't go to them because they always they won't look at me and be like, I understand what you're going through. They'll just try to say, why can't you do this? And just make it worse. Basically, they think it's just something's wrong with them, that they're just going to be unhappy for a bit. Like, their perspective has always been, why don't you just smile? Why don't you just do something that'll make you smile? So they're just ignorant on that, probably because they've never dealt with it, or they just don't understand, I guess, how anxiety and depression can affect, especially people our age, especially coming from being a first generation child. But this is especially like a good example is my sister. She was dealing with anxiety for a good bit around her teenage years, and my parents they were just so confused. They're like, well, like, they just thought she was acting up, basically. And then until they went to therapy, and now my mom, she's like saying, oh, we should all take therapy now. But yeah, they're very ignorant in mental illness. I feel like they're just misinformed and they can't relate.
Thinking about it.
I don't think about it. I mean, my dad would make little comments every now and then. Like, he would say, like, you know, if I would be, like, crying over a show or, like, an episode or, like, a character dies, he'd be like, that's not something worth crying about. Like, there's things you should cry about. Like, when a family member dies, like, cry about that. But not if, like, a character dies. It's not real, you know. I don't know if it's because, like, my mom and my sisters, like, outweigh my dad in terms of, like, people I communicate with. So I was, like, never, you know, I never had, like, too many people telling those things to me. Like, maybe if I had a brother or something that was saying things to me too, I would be like, oh, you know, I have to, like, try, like, to not show that side of me. But since I had my sisters and my mom also, I feel like they supported me and, like, just on that side of, like, in terms of supporting me and, like, by not even saying anything in a way, you know what I mean? Because they didn't care, like, you know. No, I don't tell my parents everything. I tell them, like, you know, like, how things are at work, but I'm not telling them, like, oh, oh, I got so messed up last night, you know, like things like that, you know,
Yeah.
that's more like from my friends. But you know, I have come to them for like relationship advice, you know, work advice, just general like life advice, you know.
I know that my mom and dad have all the faith in the world that I'm going to make it. Like I'm going to have some profession that brings me a good income. And I know that myself too. Like I've always thought that, like I've known for a fact that I'm going to be successful. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. Yet, right now I'm going into interning and everything, but I have to learn if I even like that. But I just know that whatever I do, that I'm going to be making money.
What interests me?
Yeah, like what if you could do? What would you do if you could do it as a career?
Oh yeah, I'd animate. I'd animate my own TV show probably. You know, have like my friends compose the music and like help me out. That's what I would want.
Yeah.
I love psychology. It definitely helps me out in like trying to discover who I am. It just so happens that there's a path within psychology that can appease what my parents have for me, like what they want for me. But yeah.
So yeah, I'm managing in business management, but I want to get my master's in sports management.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like that'd be the best major for me because it combines my two interests in business and sports.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I've been so into sports is because as a little kid, my dad would have the sports radio on when he'd drop us off at school, and so I'd always hear stuff, and then I always saw like he'd be interested in it since he'd listen it to every day.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started watching sports. Ever since I was little, followed basketball, and then eventually football, and baseball, and he'd always come home after work, and I'd be in my room watching sports news, and he'd be like, "Oh, how's the score? Like, did we win?" So I'd always update him on that stuff. So yeah, he definitely influenced me to, I guess, find my passion in sports.
Mm-hmm.
I love video games, obviously. I like, you know, film. I love watching movies. I'm in a band. You know, do that. Do that for fun. Yeah, I don't know. Just art, I guess, in general. I'm like really into.
And like, what is your dream like job? Like
Dream job?
in occupation, yeah.
Yikes. I don't know. I feel like I have so many. Like I would love to be like, I would love to be like a director like for movies, or like if the band like pops off, that'd be cool. Or like I like detective work, like either private investigator or like homicide detective. That's like also really
Good.
it's a wrap.